as pressure mounts on Russia to come clean in the civilian killings in Bucha. The European Union has now significantly targeted the Russian energy sector for the very first time by imposing an embargo on Russian coal. The EU nations, remember, rely very heavily on Russia for its energy needs and import almost about 45% of their coal from Russia, which is worth almost about $4 billion per annum. The EU has approved an embargo on Russian coal. The package includes a time period of about 120 days to find alternative suppliers to Russia. In addition to this, it has also closed off the bloc's ports to Russian vessels. The sanctions package also includes nearly about $11 billion ban on exports to Russia, which include high-tech goods and also freezing the Russian bank accounts. The embargo, which begins from the month of August, also aims to cripple the supplies of the critical raw materials to Russia. Kremlin-friendly Belarus will also be impacted by the embargo, but Germany has sought some time to implement the coal ban. Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that Germany will have to wait another 4 months to phase out Russian coal. Now, according to the government, Germany may have to switch off some of its power plants in case of a sudden Russian coal ban.
Aus meiner Sicht ist es so, dass wir, was das Sanktionspaket betrifft, diese Übergangsfrist nutzen werden müssen. Wenn es schneller geht, ist ja gut, aber wir brauchen schon ein bisschen Zeit, die Unternehmen auch, die allerdings seit einiger Zeit dabei sind, sich neue Lieferanten zu suchen. Insofern ist das eine gut vorbereitete Lage, in der wir uns jetzt hier befinden.
The European Union is also looking to bolster Ukraine's weaponry by rolling out another $550 million to Ukraine, which takes the total to more than $1.5 billion. Meanwhile, Australia has also sent the first of the 20 Bushmaster four-wheel armoured vehicles, which includes 2 ambulances at the request of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
There will also be a big ask of the developed world to contribute to the rebuild within the Ukraine, the shelling of residential areas, the destruction of facilities, of government buildings, of all of that infrastructure, which has been the second tragedy, followed of obviously by the human tragedy. It'll take a lot of money and support to rebuild, and Australia will be there with Ukraine during that stage as well. And we hope that we can get through the war stage into the rebuild stage as quickly as humanly possible.
Meanwhile, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has hailed the unity of the G7 nations, promising justice for the victims of the Bucha killings. She will be in Kiev today to express European solidarity with the people of Ukraine. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what the EU is actually trying to do with its sanctions, and will this be enough to somehow try Russia see reason and make Russia to pull back? We're joined in by our correspondent Rosie Burchard, who's joining us live from Brussels at this point of time. Thank you very much indeed, Rosie, for joining us on this broadcast and beyond. What is interesting is that there is now an embargo on Russian coal that is being talked about, but is this going to be enough?
Well, it's certainly not enough in the eyes of Ukraine. However, EU officials have hailed this latest package, agreed really just in the last few minutes, as a big step forward. Now, this is the 5th round of sanctions from the European Union. They've been taking so far a progressive approach, sort of tightening the screws as they see it on the Kremlin's ability to finance this war. And this 5th package, just agreed, includes for the first time that controversial territory of restrictions on energy imports, this time on coal. Now, that embargo on coal imports, as you said, will come into force in a few months' time, starting from August. That's seen as allowing countries time to terminate existing contracts, and then from there on there will be no more imports allowed of coal into the bloc. However, that really is seen as a bit of a compromise, because it does not go as far as Ukraine would like, and even as some EU countries would like as well, because coal is only part of the EU's energy imports from Russia. There's also Russian oil and, of course, Russian gas. And until very recently, the European Union imported around 40% of its gas from Russia. So a real sense of dependence there from the European Union on Russia. The bloc has, as a whole, committed to trying to phase out that dependence, but it's certainly not the timeline that Kiev has been calling for. And I was at NATO HQ yesterday when Dmytro Kuleba, the Ukrainian foreign minister, arrived, and he really gave Western leaders a bit of a dressing down when it came to their sanctions response. He said it shouldn't take atrocities like those reported in Bucha to prompt and inspire further action and tighter sanctions from Western leaders.
Absolutely indeed. And as you mentioned, that this embargo, which will come into effect sometime in August, only covers Russian coal and not necessarily Russian gas and Russian oil, on which a lot of these European Union nations rely. Now, at this point of time, is it possible at all, do you think, that there could be a consensus within the European Union nations to actually target Russian oil and gas, which constitute the biggest part of Russia's export to the European Union?
That is really the key question among EU countries at the moment. Now, we know the European Commission, that's the building behind me, and the bloc's executive has said it is looking into further sanctions beyond this fifth package, which would include oil, but they have not yet said anything about gas. And of course, that is really something dividing European Union nations. Lithuania, for example, has sworn off of all Russian energy imports. That's because it built LNG terminals, liquefied natural gas terminals, over the past couple of years, and says it's now able to take that step. But other countries are not yet in that position of being able to sort of wean themselves off of Russian gas overnight. However, as more of these reports of atrocities emerge, and of course we've had more reports of attacks just this morning, we've had EU officials coming out to condemn that reported targeted strike on a railway station. As more of these reports emerge, the EU will be sort of felt to have to come forward with further sanctions, and this particular fifth round really came in light of those reported atrocities in Bucha. So there will be more pressure on EU nations to take further steps with this. The European Union's top diplomat Josep Borrell really presented some striking figures, looking at a comparison between what the EU has given to Ukraine in terms of aid and how much that is really such a smaller figure than what the EU spends daily on Russian energy imports.
Absolutely indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Rosie Burchett, for joining us from Brussels and getting us all those insights there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.